You know, I love doing these top 10 videos. Last year I did my top 10 games of 2020 and 2021. Then I did my annual top 50 games of all time. And after that, I did my top 10 games I enjoy playing solo. Covered a lot there, didn't I? So this is my promise to you. In 2023, I'll do more top 10 lists where I cover games I haven't talked about before. I mean, mostly re-implementations do not count. I'm Rob for JestaThaRogue.com and these are my top 10 games of 2022. These are the games I played in 2022 that were released in 2022 according to Board Game Geek to stop any arguments about the date of release. And now if you're new to the channel, please do hit the subscribe button. 2022 has been an unbelievable year for the channel, so let's keep that momentum going through 2023. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed.
Number 10.
Now I don't know if this says something about me or the year 2022, but this is the first of 5 re-implementations, reimaginings, redesigns of games that have previously been released. This changes what was once a very aggressive PvP game and makes it cooperative. King of Monster Island takes the competitive King of Tokyo and pulls everyone together to fight against an even bigger bad. The big bad wants to destroy the Earth, and if they do that, there'll be no Tokyo or New York for the monsters to destroy, so they need to stop them. Player turns are pretty much the same. You're rolling Yahtzee-style dice to heal yourself, attack the boss and any minions they may have spawned, gain energy for new power cards, and stuff like that. The boss is controlled by rolling dice into a volcano that performs actions in the different sections they land in, then follows a sheet with their actions on, scripted for where they move and who they attack. If the boss sets up enough pylons to open a portal before the good monsters kill them, the players lose. This is a lot of fun and my new favourite version of this game. Now most people play King of Tokyo with now just attack straight from the off and tend to win. In Monster Island you have to play more tactically and it puts a lot of pressure on each and every one of your die rolls to try and achieve something every turn. The downside is the price for the weight of the game. It costs as much as buying both King of New York and King of Tokyo. Also, those dice that are dropped into the volcano don't stop when they should. They stop when they want to, which could be under the table next to you. But even though we've been kicked in the face with turn 1 and lost pretty quickly and decisively, this was still a lot of fun. I mean, yes, it is really light and the dice add randomness, which a lot of people aren't going to like, but come on, it's monsters fighting monsters. What else could you want? I mean, what do you want to do? Roll dice to build power lines or something? That'll never be fun.
Number 9.
In Powerline, players are rolling dice to build power lines across the board. This is a roll and write game, where instead of writing, you're placing meeples temporarily until you're happy to where they all are, and then you replace them with more permanent tokens. So the dice are rolled and placed in colour order on the central board. Then you place matching colour meeples on your power lines, matching the numbers on your board with placement restrictions of course, and when placing you have to do it in forward or reverse colour order. Once you've worked out where you want them and you're happy, you replace the meeples with tokens that stay on permanently and re-roll for a new round. This means there is no waste paper and fits in with the carbon neutral theme of building power lines for clean energy. Also, placing the meeples means you can move them around until you're happy, which is much better than it would be if you was using a dry whiteboard. Completing a full power line rewards points, and completing all the lines into a city rewards even more points. There are also 3 random intermittent scoring cards on the main board that give you goals to aim for. So it's a fun game. It does have its issues. It is purely multiplayer solitaire. Whatever you do has no effect on my turn. Secondly, the placement restrictions, which I know have to be there, they're a bit more frustrating than they are puzzle creating for me. For example, you can only place 5 or all 6 meeples a maximum of 4 times in the whole game, and only on 3 lines at most. So towards the end of the game, if you get a good roll, you might only be able to play 2. I know why they did it, it just isn't fun for me. So it's not bad multiplayer, but this is one of those games I like to keep set up on my desk and just play every so often, try and beat my high score solo. Anyway, that's enough about Powerline. I don't want this entry to drag on. Dragon.
Number 8.
In Flamecraft, players take turns moving their dragon into a different shop on the longest board in the world, collecting resources from that shop and each dragon in it. These dragons are helping the town with their crafting. Cute. Then they add a dragon card from their hand to the shop and activate the ability on a dragon in that shop. These let you gain resources, give resources to other players for reputation, move dragons around, draw new dragon cards, etc. Instead of all that, you can enchant the shop they move to by trading in resources to complete goals for reputation. When you enchant a shop, you can activate all dragons in that shop, so it can be quite profitable. When a shop is full of 3 dragons, you add another shop from the deck, and these non-starter shops have different abilities you can use, and not all shops are used every game, adding a bit of variability. After the end game is triggered, mostly by 1 stack of cards running out, then whoever has the most reputation is the winner. So this is a fun game and one I thought about a lot after playing at Essen, but I couldn't bring myself to buy it. I've played it since, and there are a few issues I have with it. The first and most important is that it's a bit bland. It looks amazing, but the gameplay is a little bit meh. I'm a second player. I enjoy collecting the resources and try to min-max every turn and do as well as I can, but it still just fell a bit flat. The second thing is that it looks amazing, but I've played both games with deluxe components, so the cost of the game with those, which I would want of course, is 100% not worth it at that price total. That would cost about £80 in total. Now if you're happy with wooden meeples and cardboard tokens, you can get a very fun game for just £30. So you could spend £30 on Flamecraft and £50 on another game. That would be a great way to split your cash.
Number 7.
In the Great Split, players are hoarders of luxury goods and will spend the night trading them to try and get the best collection. Players are simply going to move up on several tracks and score their positions. Simple. Well, obviously it's not that simple. It's done with cards and an I split you choose mechanism. You have your hand of cards and you divide them into 2 piles any way you want and place a divider between them. Put them in an envelope and pass them to your player on your left. You receive a similar envelope for the player on your right. You choose half of them and pass the other half back to that player. Then you get the half back for the player on the left they didn't take. Then you simply match the symbols on the 2 sets of cards you have to move up the tracks. Then you draw new cards, discard down to a certain hand size, and repeat that process. After a couple of the 6 rounds, you score different tracks depending on some randomly placed tokens, and at the end of the game, you score every track. And they all score quite differently. I mean, some do just score for how far you get, but the others are pretty cool. For the blue and green gems, you score the lower of the 2 tracks twice. For the several contracts, you score each resource icon you have in each item times by the number of seals you have for that resource. Artwork is essentially the more you have, the more points, but a sliding track adjusts the value up and down as the game progresses, so if you're lower at the end of the game, it could be worth nothing. It is a very fun and unique game, and the dual layer boards help keep those tokens in place, which are going to be important throughout the game, but it bumps what could be a £20 game up to a £50 game, and I'm not sure about replayability at that price. Those are my thoughts, and I hope I don't get too much heat for them.
Number 6.
In Heat, Pedal to the Metal, players are racing around a track as you would expect from the image on the front of the box. But as this is from one of the designers of the great cycling game Flamme Rouge, you can't just put your pedal to the metal as the game title would suggest. You change gear from 1 to 4, that's how many movement cards you play, and they all have different values, but the more you play, the more you move in general. But we're not driving in a straight line, we have corners to manage. If you go too fast into a corner, you'll gain heat. You have 6 heat cards in a different stack representing your engine, and for each movement point you go over the cornering limit, you need to be able to move 1 to your deck from your engine. If you can, great, carry on. If you can't, you spin off. Now the only way to get them back into your engine so they're out of your deck and you can use them again is to drive at lower gears or to be at the back of the grid, a little bit of a catch-up mechanism, so you have to balance pushing forward and holding back. To have a bit more jeopardy, you have stress cards that when played moves between 1 and 4 for a random flip off the top of your deck. And when approaching a corner, these can be deadly. And the first person to win the race wins, obviously. Now I do want to say that Heat costs as much as Flamme Rouge and both the Flamme Rouge's expansions, but there's a lot in the Heat box. In the advanced game, there are upgrade cards letting you improve your car with various cards, a Legends mode that lets you play with AI racers, a weather module that adds different road conditions, and finally a championship that allows you to play 3 to 4 races, upgrading your car each time. So plenty there for the price, and I really enjoyed this game. I played it partly in Flemish Essen, which was a new one to me, and it was a good time for everyone at the table. If I thought I could get championships played regularly, I would own this right now. If only I could guarantee I'd have 2 to 5 challengers.
Number 5.
In challenges, up to 8 start with the same basic deck of cards, so at the start of each of the 7 rounds we'll add 1 or 2 cards each round to make it a bit better as the game progresses. And then everybody plays a quick 1 versus 1 game against an opponent, and you'll eventually play everybody at least once before the end of the game. The winner will gain a trophy worth a number of fans, and some in-game effects also reward fans. After 7 rounds, the 2 players with the most fans will play each other, and the winner of that game will win the game overall. The game itself is pretty basic. The start player will flip over a card from their deck and they will get the flag. Let's say that that card has a power of 4. The other player reveals cards 1 at a time until their combined power is 4 or more, and then they gain the flag. That player then combines their cards into 1 pile, and the other player will then have to beat the score of the top card on that stack, the last card they played. Discarded cards are added to the bench in piles by card type, and if the player overfills the bench, they lose. If they run out of cards in their deck, they lose. You can remove cards from your deck between rounds, but if you've got too many cards in your deck, your bench will fill up too quick, too few, and you'll run out of cards too quickly. This is more fun than it sounds, and a lot of cards have effects so you can build combos, but as you shuffle the deck and it plays itself, you're not really putting the plan into action. This will put a lot of people off. It's the only reason I don't have it in my hands right now. A lot of people won't like this, and a lot of people definitely won't play it twice. That said, I didn't buy it at Essen, and I keep wanting to buy it now it's out in retail here in the UK. We'll have to wait and see. I just hope not buying it doesn't make me too pirate. Sorry.
Number 4.
In Libertalia, Winds of Galecrest, Each player has a big deck of pirates numbered 1 to 40, and everyone plays with the 6 random cards from their deck so everybody has the same hand. Each player secretly chooses a character card face down. These are revealed simultaneously and are placed on the island in ascending order of rank, with ties broken by the player's reputation. The abilities on the cards are activated in ascending order, allowing them to move things around and get gold and even kill other pirates. Then, in descending order of rank, players draft a loot token that will be worth gold and provide other abilities, such as gaining reputation by switching places with the person above you on the reputation track. And after several rounds of this, we'll get a few more of the same rank cards added to our hands, but as the cards I played will be different to the cards you played, we'll go into the next round with slightly different hands of cards. After 3 voyages, the player with the most treasure wins. But the thing is here that Libertalia came out in 2012 and it had one huge flaw. It plays 6 players and each player's set of cards plays kind of rock, paper, scissors against each other as a tiebreaker. So imagine red beats blue, blue beats green and green beats red, for example. Let's say yellow also beats blue, and now let's pretend you're playing blue in a 4-player game, so you will lose on tiebreakers to 2 other players every time. Sucks, right? If you're not playing with 3 or 6 players, the game is really unbalanced. This reputation trap fixes this and fixes the game completely. Well done. This is the third of 5 re-implementations on my list after King of Monster Island and Heat, and the others make a good game better. This made a potentially good game playable. Now, I would like to own this game again after owning the original back when it first came out, but I think it's not going to be a game I play too often, maybe once or twice a year. It's not going to be an evergreen title.
Number 3.
In Evergreen, players each have a planet board and will draft cards to take actions, planting sprouts, growing those sprouts in small trees and small trees into big trees. The card also allows players to take a power that does all those actions, but also places lakes to grow adjacent trees and bushes to expand your connected green area. At the end of each of the 4 seasons, you score for the light your trees can collect from the sun token as it revolves around the board from season to season. Of course, trees cast a shadow, and those of smaller or the same size in the shadow of a tree won't collect any points at all, which is worth quite a bit at the end of the game. So you're looking at where you're planting these trees to try and score points for light at the end of each of the 4 rounds. You also score for your largest collection of orthogonally connected trees and bushes, so you need to look at adjacency for them too, without casting too much shade over your other trees. Undrafted cards each round go into a pile called the Fertility Zone, and at the end of the game you end up with piles for each biome, each with a different number of fertility symbols. You get points for each fertility symbol and each biome times by the number of big trees you have in that biome at the end of the game. This is worth big endgame points, so you need to take this into consideration when you're planting trees as well. For this you have to draft the cards you need to take the actions you want, but you also need to leave behind certain cards in order to make your biomes more profitable in your more fertile areas, and hope nobody else drafts them. For now, this is on the shelf, and it's a very fun puzzle that I like to work out as I'm playing. It obviously looks really nice on the table, and the dual layer boards work well as they did with the Great Split, which is from the same company. If it reminds you of photosynthesis, it's because it's from the same designer. I just need to play it more to get better and experiment like some kind of mad scientist.
Number 2.
In my father's work, you play over 3 generations of a family in a village performing experiments and frightening the locals. To do these, you will need to send people into town on worker placement spaces to gather resources and activate abilities. You also have your creepy caretaker performing worker placement actions back at the estate, which can be upgraded with new rooms for bonus abilities and point scoring opportunities. After 3 generations, the player with the most points from creating these experiments and from many other things will be the winner. But the game for me has 2 key parts which sets it aside from any other worker placement game. The first, other than the great components which speak for themselves, is the game is played over 3 generations, as I said, so the game resets after 2 points. Now, I know a few Euro games have a different reset period as you're playing them, but this one fits into the theme in a very natural way. It also allows the story to move on each generation and remove some rules and bring in some new ones each time. The other thing I like is the story and the app-driven component. The app controls the game, but only at certain parts and between rounds. This allows for the game to update and change depending on the actions in the game. So the 3 scenarios in the box will branch off in different direction when you play them, adding to the replayability. Yes, it's 4 hours long and there is a lot of reading, but the story is great and unfolds in a very natural way. It's 100% worth a try if you haven't played it yet, although it is a tad difficult to get hold of, I believe. I'm glad I have it on my shelf as my one and only worker placement game. Now all I need to do is give my scientist a name, and I'm going to call him, and I can only apologise, Terra Nova.
And now, number 1.
With my new pledge to not talk about games I've covered in detail before, I will say this about my number 1. Terra Nova is a slimmed down version of Terra Mystica that has a very nice and familiar gameplay that I love, but is a great option for an hour-long medium-weight game. Gone is the cult stuff and workers as a resource, and it is a more slimline rule set and straightforward gameplay. I've already done a video where I compare Terra Nova to Terra Mystica, which is there for all your Terra Nova review needs, and I've also done a how to play, both linked in the description below. And that's my list. Which is your favourite game you played in 2022? Let me know in the comments below. Also check out JestaThaRogue.com for all the reviews of games that I've played in 2022 and every other year. Just check out my new channel JTR Digital, where I do video game playthroughs on YouTube and Twitch at Jesta ThaRogue. I'm also Jesta ThaRogue on most social platforms. I've been Rob, aka Jesta ThaRogue, and I'll see you soon.